Hello and welcome to coverage of the World Championship here from Amsterdam. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Luis Scott-Vargas. And as you can see, now, every single feature match in the World Championship is insane, and this is no exception. It's Ben Stark versus Brian Kibler. Brian Kibler has never lost to Ben Stark in high-level play. He's tied him twice and beat him 4 times. And you mentioned earlier, Luis, that you thought Ben Stark would be keenly aware of this fact.
Well, I know he is because I have a similar record against Kibler. I mean, I beat him once, I think, and Ben and I were both complaining about it.
Okay, so hopefully for Ben Stark, he can get things moving in a positive direction as far as that go. You see, he's got his.
Hopefully, the force is with him.
Yeah, we'll just let that sit. I was gonna say some stuff, but you wrapped that up nicely. All right, so both players starting off, and we hear Brian Kibler say, "Geez," after a Blinkmoth Nexus turn 1 from Ben Stark, but a turn 2 is pretty nice for him as he goes Ethereum Sculptor into a free Aether Spellbomb. Now, before Brian Kibler's turn, though, he's going to cycle a Traumatic Visions to go get a Plains. Now, we know that Brian Kibler's playing at least a 4-color deck. Was it 5? I don't remember, but it's a multicolored deck for sure.
I think he actually has just 4. He does not have any black.
Okay.
But he's got Knight of the Reliquary, which is where he wants to be.
That's exactly where Brian Kibler wants to be. Now, we wouldn't expect to see it in Limited. We would expect to see it maybe in Modern or something, but looks like it's Modern Masters is when the Knight of the Reliquary is going to show up for Brian Kibler. Now, Knight of the Reliquary, really great card in Constructed. Less so in Limited, but still very good.
Yeah, it's quite the card. Basically, it ramps you until the point where you want to start attacking with your 4/4 or 5/5.
Yeah.
And it fixes your colors as well. So it certainly does the trick. Kibler also has a Sword of Light and Shadow, which is in his hand. So even though Aether Spellbomb does fight against that well, Kibler certainly is in pretty good spot here. So he's going to ramp out what maybe like a giant Dust Wasp this turn, it looks like.
And then the next turn he can go. He can even if he doesn't have a land, he can play and equip his sword and start going to work.
Yeah, he's got a lot of options here, as does Ben with Pestermite and various other things going. So, looks like Kibler chose to play Giant Dust Wasp with Moloku and Sword of Light and Shadow in hand. So he has access to some good cards. You got Pestermited. So that's why the Dust Wasp enters the battlefield tapped.
All right.
Ben Stark choosing to bounce the Dust Wasp, which is interesting because he actually had the option to bounce the Knight and maybe strand the Knight in Kibler's hand.
No white mana source sitting available there.
I think that Ben might have wanted to just take the gamble there and tried to go off there with just basically killing Brian's Knight instead of just temporarily bouncing. Of course, Moloku would have come out either way, so.
So Ben Stark under a lot of pressure here really early in the game from Brian Kibler.
And Ben with still a pretty solid hand. He's got Court Homunculus and then Ethereum Sculptor and
Mirror Enforcer.
Mirror Enforcer as well. So he's got a bunch of different options. The second Ethereum Sculptor means that Mirror Enforcer is going to be almost free to play.
Right.
So, but I think that the Moloku is going to be really tough for Ben to beat here, even though he's got a lot of stuff going on. Moloku is really hard to fight through.
Now, he's in a reasonable spot as Moloku. There's 5 lands, just the minimum amount of lands for Moloku here. So that will crimp what Brian Kibler is able to do a little bit, but he's going to need to come up with some pretty serious pressure here pretty quickly. All right, there's a Court Homunculus to start things off for Ben Stark.
Yeah, and I think his turn's going to start with this, and then possibly into like a Mirror Enforcer here as well, leaving Aether Spellbomb up. But he still is in a spot where he's gonna have a hard time beating through. Like Kibler can make a token here by sacking a land and then returning, which does stop Pestermite from attacking.
Does Kibler need to go grab another white source? No, he's still just ignoring it.
At this point, it does not look like it's very likely that the Knight gets bounced.
Okay.
Since Ben's got other things on the agenda.
All right. So there's an illusion token for Brian Kibler, which, like you mentioned, is going to hold that Pestermite at bay.
Yeah, I mean, Ben might just trade for it since it's not like it's getting that much better for him, but I think smashing with the other 2 is a given. So, unfortunately for Ben, the Kira he has in his hand is not it's not castable, and
Right.
it doesn't actually stop what Kibler's doing. Kibler's not really interested in targeting any of Ben's things.
Right.
Yeah, these decks are impressive. I mean, Kibler's
Yes.
got a Knight of Reliquary going on a Moloku on turn 4.
Right.
Ben, in turn, or I guess turn 5 because he played Dust Wasp on turn 4, and then Ben, look at he's bounced 2 of Kibler's things and has a million guys in play.
Yeah, these are impressive. And Ben Stark still has 2 cards in his hand. Remember, he's also got that Blink Moth Nexus that he can use to maybe push through a little bit more damage. And this is going to be a close one. There's that Sword of Light and Shadow that you mentioned as well. So, like you said, really impressive decks here.
Yeah. And
Now, I'll note, there was an interesting story that you heard Rich say a little earlier. Ben Stark actually passed Moloku. Now, I don't know if it was the one that ended up in Brian Kibler's deck. There's another one in the draft.
it was actually the one that ended up in Martel's deck.
Okay. But Brian Kibler passed a Moloku.
Or Ben Stark, yeah.
Excuse me, Ben Stark passed a Moloku
For a
in
Sanctum
this draft.
Gargoyle.
Yeah, for a Sanctum Gargoyle. So
When he was blue.
pretty insane.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was what he wanted to do, but it is certainly a tough pick. Not very many people would have made that pick.
No.
So Esprazoa does give Ben a good shot because you can start looping Sanctum Gargoyle and bouncing things with Aether Spellbomb here. So
Absolutely. This is the only Esprazoa in Ben Stark's deck, but it's one of his best cards.
yeah, Esprazoa is definitely an engine in Affinity. So Ben also has a Cryptic Command in his deck, which even though he's fairly far away from casting it now, it is the sort of thing where Kibler doesn't have forever. Eventually Ben is going to be able to Cryptic Command all of Kibler's creatures and attack.
All right.
So
Kibler's not really in a position to be on the offensive here, but with his Sword of Light and Shadow, he can start to try to craft a situation where he gets value from it,
yeah,
from his graveyard, and can bolster his life total enough so that the blocker that he doesn't have anymore doesn't matter as much.
yeah, he's not in a position where any of his creatures in the graveyard, but eventually Sword of Light and Shadow will just be getting him 3 a turn, which is enough to get him out of Ben's range, since Ben can't really attack. The Knight of the Reliquary is big enough to hold back the Mirror Enforcer at this point, and then Moloku plus the tokens hold back most of the flyers. Esprazoa can still probably get in.
The Knight's a 5/5 right now.
Yeah, Ben might suspect at this point that Kibler does not have more white mana and might just end up bouncing the Knight as a result.
Yeah.
So, looks like it's time for a Dust Wasp, which will further make it difficult for Ben to attack and also, threaten a trade with the Esprazoa. Though, because of the Sanctum Gargoyle, Ben can attack with the Esprazoa without too much fear. If Kibler wants to trade, then I think Ben will be happy doing that. Alternately, before attacking, Ben can just Sanctum Gargoyle, either Spellbomb the Knight. So I think the Esprazoa draw actually puts Ben right back in the thick of things.
Which is saying a lot considering the power level of the cards that Brian Kibler's already played.
Yeah, it just pressures Brian so much by bouncing a creature every turn that he can't very effectively use Moloku and use his creatures. So, and
Nice.
also, all the spells are free now. All
Yeah.
Ben's spells are free with 2 Ethereum Sculptors in play. And you do a second island for Kira if he really wants it.
Yep.
So it looks like he may end up either just saving the Spellbomb. I could see bouncing the Knight and attacking with Mirror Enforcer, but I think he wants to wait and see what Kibler ends up using the Knight for. Because if Kibler doesn't get a Plains, then bouncing the Knight is very good. But I think Kibler is at this point going to get a Plains.
He still doesn't, though. Now,
He
is
just has
this
no
the moment
fear.
here where
I think
Ben Stark could bounce the Knight of the Reliquary if he wanted, or does it just not matter at this point?
he might. It might be that Kibler doesn't have another Plains. He only has the one.
Okay, yeah, but I mean,
So I think, and Ben should know that. I mean, I don't know if he looked at every single land count that Kibler has access to, but
yeah, I don't know if that was included. It was.
I guess it wasn't because
Yeah.
it was only the pool. So Ben doesn't actually know whether Kibler has more Plains. So he's not going for the bouncing of the Knight, but it actually I think would work out fairly well for him if he did.
Okay.
I think at some point he might naturally bounce it, and then at that point it'll be revealed that Kibler cannot recast the Knight of the Reliquary.
Right.
And I think that's his only white spell. It does not look like he's got any other
Brian
white spells.
Kibler, everybody.
Yeah, he does have an Engineered Explosives in his deck somewhere, which is a very good card. So if he draws an Explosives, things could get ugly. Penumbra Spider is also pretty hard to beat through.
There's Terramorphic Expanse to follow things up for Kibler here as he is in full shields up mode. Ben Stark threatening a potentially huge attack. Brian Kibler on 14 life. So he knows that if this game goes very long, then Brian Kibler's going to be in a really good position.
Okay.
All right, and Ben Stark's just going to draw a card here instead
Yeah,
of
I think Ben's just
bouncing.
looking for his Cryptic at this point.
Yeah.
Since since drawing multiple cards a turn off Esperzoa is already pretty sick.
All right, now he does hit his third island as well, which is something he's going to need for that cryptic.
And gets to play Kira, so he's in fairly good shape there. Yeah, Ben's deck is
pretty sweet.
Yeah. With Kira in play, Ben can't bounce his own creatures with either spell anymore, but I still think he's pretty happy with how things are going.
Yeah. All right, so a little reading material here for Ben.
Yeah, as Kibler goes to fetch, Ben decides to do a little research. So yeah, Kira's a pretty powerful one.
Did you hear what Ben said? So it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the kind of games you live for.
Oh, this is the best. Yeah.
Yeah, Kibler has 2 erratic mutations as well as a Torrent of Stone. So Kira is stopping all those cards. Again, Engineered Explosives is a pretty big threat.
Yes.
So that is something that Ben might want to watch out for.
Kibler has access to 3 different colors of mana here, so he can Engineered Explosives for 3.
Yeah.
He does not have 4 as his lone plains is sitting in the graveyard.
Yeah, and he does have a Tarmogoyf in his sideboard as well, which I think he might want to sideboard in because Ben's going to reliably put artifacts into the graveyard.
Yeah, that's true. And a lot of times it's an artifact creature, which is, 2 requirements met.
Yeah.
Brian Kibler deciding what to do for the turn. He's got an Errant Ephemeron in his hand. He also has the Sword of Light and Shadow.
And a Dirkwood Bailoff.
Dirkwood Bailoff and an Nantuko Shaman. So
yeah, he's got a lot of cards.
He does.
Again, Moloku is something he could going in on, but Ben with multiple flying creatures, at this point 3 flying creatures that don't die to tokens plus a Pestermite, it's going to be a long time before he has enough tokens to really just swarm Ben.
Now, Brian will know about the potential for a Cryptic command here, right? And Moloku...
I would imagine so. I mean, he could...
Could he bounce Moloku and tap team? Or
yeah, if you bounce Moloku and tap the team, you get to the point where there's no tokens untapped.
Okay.
And even though Kibler just sees Ben's pool, I have a hard time imagining he'll put Ben on not running Cryptic command.
Right.
I mean, that's just not likely. So.
No.
Nantuko Shaman comes down, and now Kibler
suspended.
has to... suspended, because that's why you get the extra card.
Yep.
Kibler has to decide whether he wants to play the sword and not equip it, but show it to Ben, or suspend Ephemeron. He actually might want to suspend Ephemeron. The way this game's going, he's not actually doing anything.
So he's suspend Darkwood. Is he going to...
I could see suspending Ephemeron too. Though if you suspend one, you might not want to suspend the other one.
I see. And he decided not to. It also leaves him with 2 activations of Moloku up if he wants to do that.
Yeah,
He's got exactly 7 mana currently, which is what he needs to hard cast that Ephemeron.
But yeah, Kibler either needs to find Engineered Explosives to, I guess, get the Esperzoa off the board, because that's really the card that's causing him the most problems. Or he needs to get a couple Sword of Light and Shadow hits in and really gain enough life to where Ben isn't going to do lethal with Cryptic. Because right now Ben has 6, 8, 11, 13. Yeah, he has 19 in play off Cryptic command, which is definitely enough to do lethal.
Right. Brian Kibler, though, continuing to thin the lands out of his deck as well, thanks to one of his favorite cards, if not his favorite card, the Knight of the Reliquary there.
Yeah, he plays Knight of the Reliquary almost as often as he can. So.
He does.
So yeah, the reason that we're mostly concerned with Cryptic command is he gets to go ahead, or Ben gets to go ahead and bounce Moloku, tap all of Kibler's creatures, and just attack with everything.
Yep.
And that generally is the plan. And with Kira in play, Kibler drawing removal spells doesn't really do much either.
All right, here comes a Moldrifter, I think.
Well, that's a nice one.
Yeah.
See if he can peel the explosives he's looking for, because all the targeted removal really doesn't really do a whole lot. So. Let's see.
Kibler makes it really easy for us commentators.
Yeah.
We get a lot of chances to see the cards, just very short.
Yeah. It looks like you drew a Pestermite.
Yeah, I see that.
That's nice. Blinding Beam is also pretty interesting. Because of the tokens, it's going to be hard to really get too much value out of it, but it is something to keep in mind since it's like a mini Cryptic command.
Is that what Ben Stark drew?
Yeah.
Okay.
But he's deciding what he wants to do, because he can do something like bounce the Dust Wasp, Blinding Beam 2 things, but he still doesn't really have great attacks here. He also could start attacking with Esperzoa and then bouncing it, or then returning it with Sanctum Gargoyle. He has to skip drawing an extra card that way, but he does get to go ahead and attack. So
All right, Eric Froelich up a game over Raptor, Josh Utter-Layton, on one of the side tables there.
Yeah, so Ben is pretty deep in the tank here, but that's only because he has a lot of options.
That's right. All right, third Ethereum Sculptor for Ben Stark. These ones aren't really getting that much better, but he is now paying 1 mana for his
Sanctum Gargoyle. He sculpted the perfect hand.
He has indeed. All right, another activation of Knight of the Reliquary.
Kibler's got to be nearly done at this point.
Yes.
Since he's got a lot of land in his graveyard and a lot in play. Which does, increase the odds of him drawing gas fairly significantly.
At this point, after peeling 4 or 5 lands out, for sure.
So yeah, Explosives is his big draw. Pestermite, unfortunately, doesn't really tap Ben's creatures.
Nope. But thanks to Kira.
Kira, the Great Glass Spinner, does do a pretty good job of stopping things.
I think Kibler forgot to tick down his Dirkwood Baloth there.
Well, that is that is allowed at this point. So
yeah, that happens.
Kibler does have outs here too. He can Pestermite something and then Erratic Mutation it if you'd like. If he wants to use Pestermite to knock the shields down off Kira, then Erratic Mutation. Looks like it's time to start getting in with a Sorted Muldrifter, which Ben is probably not too happy with, since it does put a clock on him. If Kibler gains too much life and does too much damage, then it's going to be hard for Ben to come back.
Might not be good enough at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we're not at that point yet, but we are certainly in danger of getting there after a couple turns. I mean, Ben is drawing 2 cards a turn, which is nice. One of the reasons Kibler wants to equip Muldrifter also is if the sorted creature gets bounced, he's not too unhappy.
That's what I was thinking too, because if Ben wanted, he could just keep bouncing whatever was equipped after it attacked and not take hits from the sorted creature. But yeah, you don't want to do that to a Muldrifter, though.
Yeah.
I mean, Kibler's his library is going to start getting thin at some point.
Yeah, I suspect it won't come down to that, but it's definitely a concern. I mean, it happened against Martel. I don't know if he actually got decked, but I know his library got down to two cards. So yeah,
he did get decked.
We have confirmation that natural decking did occur.
Yeah.
So Ben has a couple different blocks here. He can just chump with Nexus. He can chump with Pestermite. He cannot block with Sanctum Gargoyle because of the sword. He can block with Esperzoa. He can double block with something.
Looks like he's pulling Kira to the front here.
Interesting. He knows Kibler has removal spells in his deck, but I guess he's not concerned about that. He can double block here. I think I like the block with Blinkmoth Nexus plus Pestermite better than blocking with Kira.
You can activate your Blinkmoth Nexus.
Though that doesn't actually work, no, because the Nexus can't pump itself with Kira in play.
Oh, it does target, doesn't it? Modern Masters, you gotta love it.
So Kibler goes to 17, Ben goes to 16, and then Ben's gonna go ahead and cycle either Spellbomb. Oh no, he's gonna cycle it onto Moloku and cycle Moloku right back into Kibler's hand.
It's very aggressive cycling.
Yeah.
I just heard that Martin Yuza has lost his match in the feature match area. He started off 0-3.
Wow. Well, he's not out of it yet.
He's not.
He can come back. He's got to rattle off a bunch of wins.
But this is his strength. Yeah. All right, Moloku back in hand.
So Ben induced Kibler not doing anything with Moloku, and now he gets to Blinding Beam 2 of Kibler's flyers, since he can no longer make Moloku tokens because it's not in play. So that is certainly something pretty good.
Is that another Ethereum Sculptor?
Yeah.
Oh, man. 4 of them.
So Ben's going to, for insurance sake, get the Spellbomb back first.
Pre-combat.
Yeah. And he's not attacking for lethal here, but he is attacking for a good chunk of damage. And then it does stop. The Blinding Beam, because he entwined it, does stop the Muldrifter from untapping even.
That's right.
Even though he didn't target it, unlike Frost Breath, say, in M14.
Right.
Which we'll likely see some of as well. So it looks like he's considering bouncing the Illusion token and maybe attacking for like 4, attacking for 8. It looks like he's just bouncing the Knight. He's finally getting rid of the Knight of the Reliquary.
He's figured it out.
And now he can attack with all his ground creatures too. Looks like, yeah, the whole crew is getting in there. He's got only the Sanctum back to block with.
Like Pestermite? Not something I was reading from.
Pestermite is good, because Pestermite lets Kibler untap and then now he gets to kill the Esperzoa, which
Wow. So
this is a pretty big blowout for Ben.
So he's going to use the Pestermite not to tap down something on defense, but to defensively untap his own Dust Wasp.
Well, because of Kira, he couldn't even do that. So yeah, this
That's
is
right.
But this is better anyway. Like this does really just let him.
Oh, this is way better. Yeah.
Destroy Ben. So now he gets to chump, do some trades, and then not even take that much damage. He takes like
with 3 or 4,
5 damage or something.
5 damage. Also, this is this is huge. Getting Esperzoa off the table and shutting that engine down is nice.
Yeah,
I mean, it was either an extra card per turn or something from Kibler being bounced a turn, thanks to the Esperzoa plus the Sanctum Gargoyle here.
So it looks like taking a little more than 5. He's taking like 7, 6 here, but
6.
Yes, 8 actually. But yeah, 8 damage is still not enough to kill Kibler, though it does mean Ben might have lethal next turn with Cryptic Command, though Sword of Light and Shadow might actually have something to say about that also. So
that's right. Now the Penumbra Spider and the Mole Drifter are not going to untap during Kibler's untap step, but he does have Nantuko Shaman sitting there.
Yeah, if he didn't have that Pestermite, he would have been in a huge amount of trouble. But since he did, he's going to be, I think, in pretty decent shape. I mean, the Moloku makes it pretty hard for Ben to kill him. So it looks like Ben will actually have to draw the Cryptic Command. Okay. It looked like he might be able to power through without it, but I don't think that's going to happen at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And Ben does have a careful consideration, though he doesn't have 5 blues. So not quite yet.
5 would be better.
He's got a second Sanctum Gargoyle, so he could draw a second Sanctum Gargoyle into getting back Esperzoa. But Kibler has a lot of options now too. Moloku is the safest one, since just having another creature in play that can make 3 or 4 more creatures does let him clog the board a lot more, since Ben does actually have a lot of creatures in play still.
Yeah, that's a great insurance plan there for Brian Kibler. And Ben agrees. He says, that seems pretty good.
Yeah, Ben understands that Moloku is Kibler's best shot. Is that the Cryptic Command?
I think that was, actually. Was that the Cryptic Command?
Oh, sweet. I don't like the sound of that.
That definitely was. It might not be lethal still, because Brian does have Erratic Mutation in hand. So let's say he kills the Mirror Enforcer. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's still enough even if he kills Mirror Enforcer.
Is it sweet?
So
it's definitely a spell. I will guarantee that.
Ben is guaranteeing it's a spell. He's pulling out some blue mana. So I mean, Ben still has to see the bounce Moloku, tap all your creatures play, which I don't know if he played much during Champions block, but that is something that was relevant. So he's attacking. I guess he can pass before blockers. See if Brian makes tokens. Let's see. Right now, if Brian blocks the 2 biggest creatures, the Mirror Enforcer being the other one, he still takes 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So,
which is lethal.
Yeah. So he can't just go straight to blockers, I don't think. I think he has to make some tokens.
And once he does, Ben Stark can spring his trap.
Yeah, and I'm sure Brian has been, worrying about Cryptic Command the whole time. There's no way he hasn't.
Right.
But he is, he has to, even if he knows Ben has it, he has to figure out how to play around it, even if he doesn't know Ben has it. So.
I'll make a guy. Yep. So
2 blockers still leaves you dead. I mean, it's fine.
you're doing after the
makes,
ability.
obviously.
So yeah. So I have.
Let me think about the second about if you're not conceding. I mean, if you don't have anything, 2 blockers leaves you dead. You're blocking.
Okay, so Ben, it looks like they're discussing things,
You just figured it out.
but I don't think Ben realizes that he can bounce Moloku and tap it. But he still has lethal anyway.
Okay, yeah.
But that might be relevant later in the match. So
right, as that
it's
was
important
one of
knowledge
his
for
minutes.
Kibler to know too.
Well, I actually had the sword for a while.
But
why were you sandbagging?
Because I was trying to. I was trying to get in a position where I could explosives you or something.
No, that's clearly your best card, but that's probably going to win you the game when you draw it anyway.
Yeah.
Why not pressure me with the sword?
It's probably, like I said, I think it may have been wrong.
Yeah, right. No, I understand your reason.
You can play Magic at a store near you every Friday.
it seems like,
Earn
I
Planeswalker
have
points and
things
battle
in my
against
hand
your
and I'm
friends in
playing
Friday Night
Magic.
Magic.
And I
August
still have it
F&M
off my board.
promo card is Dimir Charm. Visit wizards.com/FNM to find a store near you. Let's take a listen to what the players are chatting about here.
So yeah,
No, I know.
So you should only be trying to think about blinding being.
Well, I mean, I had other stuff like the Pester Might and.
It's probably not gonna be cryptic though.
Yeah, I mean.
I was sitting here worrying about explosives the whole time, but I didn't think you had sword. Although I know I understand, because if you draw explosives soon, then you don't want explosives on the sword. But sword is of so little importance in the end game.
Yeah.
After the Moloko explosives.
All right, so players chatting about this is a common thing to happen among players that are friendly with each other. Somebody that you don't play a lot of Magic with, you haven't been on testing teams with, you might not be so open about the information, but there's a lot of respect between these two players. They know what each other knows, and so they can have a pretty nice discussion about what just happened in the match.
On the side of each.
yeah. The main point of contention there was that Ben thought that Kibler should have played Sword of Light and Shadow earlier. And the reason Kibler didn't was that if he drew explosives, he did not want to blow it up for 3 because it would have killed the sword.
Yeah.
But Ben disagreed, saying that sword doesn't actually matter in the late game, and if he does draw explosives, he's probably in good shape. So he should just play as if he's not going to.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think I would have played the sword earlier just to try to get some value in. I think Kibler is in pretty good shape if he does draw engineered explosives. So I think planning for when you do is maybe not the best course of action.
I see that Ben Stark is taking a look at a Pact of Negation as a potential sideboard card here. Is that because of cards like Moloku, Sword, and Engineered Explosives?
Every time you play against a deck with Moloku or big cards like that, and explosives especially in the late game, I think you do consider it. I was pretty sure Ben was at least going to consider boarding Impact, and it looks like he probably is.
So that's just one of those things that you want to have some type of answer to these cards. Ben can't answer Engineered Explosives any other way, right?
Particularly stylish.
Well, I mean, he can try to vary his casting costs, but that's not a very easy thing to do.
But his deck is much happier just
it's all 2s and 3s,
stuff out.
a couple 4s, but I think that Ben does definitely want Pact. It looks like he boarded in other cards too. Let's see, anything else that really stands out. He could have boarded in a Hillcomber Giant, but that's not very good against Moloku since you can pull back the mountain.
Right.
He could have boarded in Dispeller's Capsule against Sword and Explosives, but that's a little thin. So
I agree.
I think it's mostly just the Pact of Negation that he wants.
And Ben didn't actually seem that concerned about the sword, which is strange because those swords are generally considered 2 of the best cards in the format, if not the first and second best card in the format.
Yeah, I think the combination of having Aether Spellbombs and recurring Aether Spellbombs and just being able to race means that Ben isn't actually that worried. Sword is pretty slow.
Is not that safe.
Yeah, I mean, you just had a bunch of guys in play.
Believe me, every turn, a couple turns when I'm looking at the board, I was thinking, okay, if I end a turn bounce on tap, what's the output?
Yeah.
But that's kind of all the more reason to crush the sword, because you start gaining life or forcing me to check.
But I mean, I was basically, just trying to play out a bunch of stuff and then go in the sword plan.
Yeah.
But
it's certainly perfectly reasonable. But I don't think it's better though.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it seems like I was probably wrong.
Yeah.
All right, so it looks like they came to a consensus. Ben Stark was right.
Well,
I'm gonna stick to it.
He said
I
He said
didn't realize that
Kibler's
once
line
you
was
already
reasonable. He just didn't think that it was correct. And
I
Kibler
realized
said,
that
yeah,
absolutely.
no, he said, I see the flaw in it.
yeah,
I mean, it's a little tougher
when you
to
say
think about,
it's
like,
reasonable
players
but not
count,
correct,
but
it
it's
does
very
mean
likely that you only have
That
one
I think
it's
you're
wrong.
wrong.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's not the same as Kibler just making a mistake, because that's not what happened.
Right.
It's that he had a decision to make and the choices are close, but Ben likes one more than the other.
Exactly.
So Kibler did agree with Ben, though.
I got rid of my points in the
I don't know if
first
it's ever happened, but people have theoretically agreed with Ben to stop arguing. But in this case, I think Ben is right.
Okay, fair enough.
So it sounded like Ifro beat Josh 2-0 here.
Okay. So what did Josh end up with then from
He
the
went 1 and 2.
1 and 2?
Apparently, if you say someone's deck is good,
Yeah.
things don't go well for them. That's all I've heard from Twitter.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Of course not. But I would say that it's
Your
not
deck, my deck? Should
not
be.
very hard to figure out whether you want to play or
Can't be
draw
100.
in this particular
No,
matchup.
not in this matchup.
Okay, good luck.
You too.
My deck.
Looking at their opening hands are exciting, especially Ben's, because you want to see how many cards are going to be in play on turn 3.
No kidding. Brian Kibler snap keeps, and so does Ben Stark. Sure.
All right. Well, I guess we're off to the races.
Suspend search.
Kibler's got a handful of suspend cards. That is actually a pretty good start. And Ben does not have much to play.
Yeah, the 1-drop slot's not super important. He's got
Yeah.
some workers,
Suspend.
but
Dust Wasp.
Yeah,
Set up for this draw.
Ben is his hand is not as aggressive. The double Mirror Enforcer, because he just drew a second one, means that he really needs to draw another Ethereum Sculptor, and then he can really get
he can
in there.
just get in there, yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned it earlier, the Ethereum Sculptors count double for that Mirror Enforcer affinity for artifacts.
Yeah. So if he draws another Sculptor this turn, that's pretty nice. Because then next turn he can have a 3 casting cost Mirror Enforcer. But
And then a 2 casting cost Mirror Enforcer.
shortly thereafter.
Imperious.
Yeah, this is a pretty sick draw on Kibler's part. Turn 3 Imperiosaur after suspending Dust Wasp on turn 2, and he has a Crozen Grip in his hand. Like, actually, he's even got a Mold Drifter left in his hand too, which is, yeah, he's gonna put Ben under a significant amount of pressure here. Kira does help; it makes the Crozen Grip a little less effective. So Ben not playing the Aether Spellbomb because he has no real reason to use it here. Imperiosaur are one of the kind of reasons to draft a 5-color green deck, just because it can often cast turn 3 or 4 Imperiosaurs.
Are we
Yes.
allowed to ask who won other matches?
So.
Just curious, obviously. Are we allowed to ask who won other matches? Who won their match?
Ben Stark just checking in on the other matches. It doesn't
Yeah.
have a strategic
Implication.
implication, but it's just he said he was curious.
It has a railbirding implication.
Ben Stark always multi-queuing.
Yeah.
All right, and here's Mold Drifter. And it's going to just be evoked. It looks like Kibler was going to miss a land drop this turn
Yeah, and
otherwise.
he doesn't really want to do that, especially since he's got a Darkwood Bailoff in hand that he wants to cast.
Yeah.
So
Go.
his hand is good, but if Ben can draw another Sculptor or Court Homunculus, any artifact that can make it so he can cast Mirror Enforcer, then that will go a long way.
Yeah, Kira's doing some work here. I mean, Kibler's got Erratic Mutation and Crozen Grip in hand. And both
So-
of those are not great here.
Looks like Ben is going to be able to cast a Mirror Enforcer this turn, since he's got 3 artifacts out and
Yeah.
the Sculptor makes it 1 less. So
Wow.
we're back in it. Kibler does, suspending a Dust Wasp turn 2 is cool, but it's still not out yet, and
Yeah.
other things have shown up. So he does get to drop Darkwood Bailoff here. The Kira is being very good. It's making Crozen Grip less good and the
Erratic
Mutation
Mutation
a little less good. I wonder if Ben double blocks Imperiosaur when Kibler attacks. He can't be worried about a removal spell, so it might be a decent way, especially with that Dust Wasp coming in. He might not want to just take a bunch of damage. So I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up doing that. Looks like Kibler might not attack if he's thinking about just casting the Bailoff, though. I mean, I think the attack's reasonable, and I think the double block is reasonable, but I could certainly see wanting to wait, because Kibler could cast 2 removal spells on the same turn to get 1 through, which could be worth it, especially if you're getting double blocked. So he's even got a Dust Wasp he could play, but it doesn't seem like playing a Dust Wasp is quite as good as playing a Bailoff.
Just another 5/5, yeah.
Yeah, just dropping another 5/5 does seem fairly effective.
I mean, next turn he has 2 5/5s and a 3/3 flying with haste.
Yeah, he gets
2
to
removal
he
spells
gets a
in
pretty
hand.
good attack next turn, though. He's just dropping the flyer. I guess he's just going to the skies.
Okay.
Which, in this case, actually, he does have a lot of things. I think I like the 5/5 more, but if you're planning on just attacking with Dust Wasps and just not and leaving the Mirror Force alone, that is reasonable. Esperzoa is a nice one, though.
Pact of Negation in hand for Ben Stark. But he's in kind of a weird spot because he doesn't have the 5 mana to actually pay for it, so that's not...
Yeah, I would probably advise against casting Pact right now,
This is a solid plan.
but... Ben really wants to, he can bounce Imperiosaur and attack with Mirror Enforcer, but it doesn't seem like a very good use of resources.
Yeah, not a great long-term plan there, as Kibler's at 20 still.
Yeah, he can play Esperzoa and then play Mirror Enforcer here.
Yeah, he can do that.
So he can actually even do that and leave Aether Spellbomb mana up. So, as usual, Ben's a cryptic away from probably winning, which is almost always going to be the case.
Yes.
So,
He has no attacks this turn.
yeah, he's getting pressured by the flyers pretty well. He might end up just blocking a giant Dust Wasp here,
One card.
just because he's not really in a position to race them, and he doesn't have the Sanctum Gargoyles yet. And if
No.
he draws one, he can just get Esperzoa back.
Right.
Can get Aether Spellbomb.
All right.
He's
Well, that's
gonna
pretty nice.
Grip your spell bomb. Now remember, it's got split seconds, so
Yeah.
that Ben does not have the opportunity to respond
I was like,
here.
just a second. Yeah.
Yeah, Cruising Grip is a pretty good one against Aether Spellbomb there.
Yeah.
Since it does prevent. It's one of the few ways to actually prevent him from using it.
All right, Kibler's going to smash in there with 2 giant dust wasps.
You can just clock in for 6. I like the trade here.
I like that trade too. I like what you said regarding the Sanctum Gargoyle, and that's really what makes Esperzoa great in Ben's deck. He doesn't have any Fairy Mechanists, so that's really the combo there.
Yeah.
And if he draws that card, he'll get the Esperzoa back anyway.
Yeah, and Ben has so many good draws here that I think he can afford to trade and just play for that instead of trying to race. Because the problem is, if he takes 6, he can attack back for 6, but that's, I don't think, as good as just trading here.
Yeah.
So.
And he's not in Cryptic Command kill you range. So.
No, he's not. He's not very close to that. That would definitely change his decision.
Right.
Sanctum Gargoyle is easily Ben's best draw. Unfortunately, that Imperiosaur is still holding down all those Mirror Enforcers, so Ben is going to have a hard time getting through here. Though, Kibler would really like to get Kira off the table so Erratic Mutation will do something, but I don't see how that can happen anytime soon.
No. Especially with that Crozen Grip already used up.
Ben's probably not too happy with this pack negation right now. Well, this looks like this may be the Sanctum Gargoyle.
Oh, jeez, right off the top. Wow.
All right, so he gets to pick up Esperzoa. Sadly, he cannot cast it this turn for him, but
he needs one more mana to do that.
he does get to pass. I think the reason he did not attack with Kira there is he fears a Pestermite. Pestermite would just eat Kira for free, so yeah, playing around what Kibler has. This is getting a little tough for Kibler. I mean, he gets to hit for 3 with the Dust Wasp, put Ben down to 9, but then after that, Ben gets to play Esperzoa, and then he get hit down to 6, but then he gets to bounce Sanctum Gargoyle and be in a really good position. Though an Ephemeron, that was a good draw, since that actually gives him a pretty good shot. He needs another Sanctum Gargoyle. There's a Hillcomber Giant, which is not doing a whole lot of work for him here. I wouldn't be surprised if he boards that one out in Game 3.
Yeah, interesting. We just see straight blue-green here on Kibler's side.
Yep.
He just doesn't have very many mountains. I mean, Kibler has, I think just the one mountain. So,
Yeah. 1 mountain and 1 plains.
yeah, 1 mountain, 1 plains, and then a bunch of forests and islands. More forests and islands.
I see Knight of the Reliquary in hand for Kibler, which should surprise absolutely nobody, but he doesn't have a white mana source currently to cast it. He does have that Dirkwood Baloth hanging around in his hand still, though.
Yeah, which isn't really doing him a whole lot of good here, but
No.
I think he's winning on board, so that's not too bad.
And it's nice just in case Ben... Well, Ben can just get back the Aether Spellbomb, so Kibler is going to need something to block.
Yeah.
Hold off the Mirror Enforcers.
The only problem is Ben just has to take it. So now Kibler actually has a... He could have taken a gamble there. He could have Erratic Mutation the Ephemeron and hoped to hit a 3 or less casting cost card. But
Yeah, he could have.
that is quite the gamble. Yeah, he has so many bricks there that probably not a good idea. So
The things you think about, Luis.
well, that is a way to win the game.
It is a way to
Oh
win
wow,
the game.
Blinding
You're
Beam
right.
was an insane draw. There's no way he doesn't just blind. Like that actually might just be the game. It just peels Blinding Beam to tap both 5/5 and attack at 17.
So bad. I have like Crossing Grip and Mutation. I'm just like, ugh.
Well,
Yeah, that was a really good play, though.
I guess that's how you 3-0 the
Maybe he
draft.
should have gone for
World
the
Championship.
just draw everything you need right when you need
So I
it.
just was trying to,
And that
Let's
was
listen to the
time I was
players
gonna
for a
use
second.
very
Yeah, no,
good advantage.
I figured that much out.
Yeah. I thought I was winning until you did that, and then I was like, oh fuck. I don't know if I can win anymore.
Did you have Blinding Beam? Or?
No, I drew
Okay.
Blinding Beam. I mean, I had like
Yeah,
obviously.
you have that. You have
yeah,
that going. But.
No, I'm neither dead nor killing you by any
Right.
means.
Yeah. I knew I was at the Blinding Beam or Cryptic,
Yeah.
but
No.
A little bit of a
you were in,
technical
like,
discussion
you know,
there
pretty
from our
decent shape.
professional level players.
Yeah, Ben Stark is a scientist.
That
And I boarded in this, and I thought I
and
was
that's
probably
got to
gonna
be
steal it
frustrating though
sometimes,
for Brian
like, let's say
Kibler. I
like
mean,
bounce
he
there with that or something.
put himself in a really good position there, and you could tell
finally
when that
got
draw
one.
came. Welcome back to the booth, Marshall Sutcliffe here with Luis Scott-Vargas, and you got to figure he's
Yeah,
got to be a little
I mean-
bummed about that one.
That is how the game goes. Like you set everything in motion, you play to your outs, and then in this case, Ben played to his outs, drew the Blinding Beam, and won.
Yes.
Even though Kibler set things up as best he could.
I mean, Ben Stark did 17 damage on that hit.
yeah, he just straight up boom.
Yeah.
And There's not much Kibler could do about that. I certainly don't think he should have held guys back because of a blinding beam. He would have a hard time beating it regardless.
Or gone for the erratic mutation.
He should have flipped his top card to see what it was. I definitely would have.
Just out of curiosity. Yeah. But great stuff from Modern Masters here today. I love this format. I love drafting it. This was a great experience to get a chance to watch these extremely high-level players play, and with you in the booth especially. I thought that was great. Hey, we're going to get a little interview. Not an interview, excuse me. We're going to see more Modern Masters here.
Prolong our Modern Masters experience.
Yeah, I was just saying how much I enjoyed it, and now I get more like, hey, it feels like I'm Ben Stark drawing off the top of my deck or something. Like everything good is happening.
Exactly.
All right, so let's head back down to the feature match area for
take a look.
A little bit more action here for Modern Masters Draft at the World Championship.
So it looks like we've got Willie against Reed here.
It does look like that. So Willie Adel up a game versus Reed Duke. Reed Duke looking to start off his World Championship at 3-0, which, as you mentioned earlier, that the third victory would actually eclipse the number of total match wins he had last year. So
yeah,
Reed's on the path to vindication here.
I think it's going to be he's got, even if he loses this match, he's started out quite well. So
yes, agreed.
Obviously, you want to cap off the draft with a win here, and it looks like they got a pretty complicated board going on. Reed has a bunch of blight speakers in play. That's almost always good for him.
Yes.
So let's take a look. Looks like Willie's the one with the Dust Wasps this time, sending in a pair. Though if that Saltfield Recluse is active, then that does dampen the attack to some degree. And it looks like it might be, because then he can block with Avian Changeling and then Recluse it.
Take 3.
So
Drag it down.
it looks like Reed will take nothing. He'll drag down the Wasp and put himself in a pretty good spot, it looks like.
Yeah, he squashed that bug. Now there's a Trigon Predator to follow up for Willie Adel,
13.
and he gave us a quick look at what was in his hand, 2 forests. So
I think a pair of forests is not as good as a pair of blight speakers.
correct. So Reed Duke is looking to equalize here and try to pick up the 3-0 start for his World Championship.
And I think he's in good shape. I mean, he's got double gleam and Hirobi's Whispers. He's got a lot of tricks, and it looks like he's ahead on board here too. I mean, Sporloth Ancient does get to make some saplings, but the brick wall of Saltfield Recluse, Kitchen Finks, and Wrathy Trapper is doing a lot of work.
It would take something on the order of like a Trump the Domains or something like that for Willie to be able to pound through enough damage through this board state.
Yeah, I mean, he can hit with the Dust Wasp and the Trigon Predator to do a small amount of damage, but a Gleam of Resistance does let Reed, at the very least, ambush one of Willie's guys. So it looks like he's just content taking 2, and then using Blight Speakers and Amru Scouts and getting a good amount of incremental value that way.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. 3. 4.
So Reed also has to be setting up like the Gleam kill you plan here, which is not too far off, honestly. With 3 Blight Speakers in play, each Gleam is a lightning bolt.
Yeah.
So, and then he can also gets to hit with like Avian Changeling in the air.
Each Gleam is a lightning bolt. This is a crazy use for Gleam of Resistance, but it's true. Yeah. There's 2 damage from the Blight Speakers here on the end step.
Goes to 5. So I guess Reed is probably not going to make any sort of crazy all-out attack here because, with 2 cards in hand, Willie could just have, Echoing Truth or Erratic Mutation. But he is in a position where he's setting up the win in, like, actually just 1 turn. Like, especially if next time Willie attacks, Reed can, like, use Gleam to kill off the Dust Wasp, Recluse both of Willie's guys, and just do 6 to him with Blight Speakers.
Right.
So he even has Hirobi's Whisper up just in case there's shenanigans.
Go.
So yeah, Reed's sitting in the driver's seat here for sure.
All right, Willie's going to make another Sapperling. And is there a Trump in the future here for Willie?
There may well be. Well,
does he have one in his deck?
That is a good question. So we'll take a look in a second here. Though I think unless he draws it this turn, I think Reed is presenting very close to lethal here. So Willie actually beat the triple Thundercloud Shaman deck last round that Shahar had.
Wow, with his Sapperling deck?
Yeah, pretty impressive.
All right, Imperiosaur gets tapped down by the Wrathy Trapper from Reed Duke.
Yeah. So it looks like Willie's just going for it. He does not have a Trump, but he has Echoing Courage in his deck, and he may have just drawn it, since that would explain this attack.
Okay.
He also might be pretty close to just dying, so he might figure he's got to go for it this turn anyway.
Sure. I mean, you were saying that Reed Duke has a 2-turn clock right now, and it's really a 1-turn clock.
Yeah,
potentially.
He's shooting Willie down to 8, gleaming down to 5, untapping, shooting down to 2, gleaming down to -1. So that's even without attacking. That's just Blight Speakers.
Right.
So
let's take a look at what Willie Adel has in his hand here. Well, it's a Penumbra Spider, so this is just I'm going to lose anyway.
yeah, this is the I'm going for it anyway hand.
Yeah.
Well, which I don't think is going to work out all that well for Willie, considering Reed does have Gleam and Hirobi's Whisper just in case. So.
Yeah, and he can cast both of them.
Yeah, but I mean, Willie was dead anyway, so he might as well go for the attack.
That's right.
And I mean, there is a possibility Reed makes conservative blocks and maybe doesn't want to use Gleam because he fears a combat trick.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with Hirobi's Whisper in hand, that's just not that likely.
Right.
Though he can't actually cast it now to use the Wrathy Trapper.
Yeah, you're
so.
right.
Okay, block.
Alright, I smell a gleam.
Yeah,
Willie.
Willie is wise to what's going on.
He is indeed. He smells a gleam.
I don't know what a gleam smells like, but
But he does.
yeah, apparently Willie does. So
-2.
Alright.
yeah, so
Lose 3 life.
He gleam off whatever.
Gleam of Resistance.
Okay.
so this is lethal even without the second gleam because now Reed could just attack on his turn.
Yeah. But the writing was on the wall here for Willie Adel, hence the attack here.
Yeah, I mean it was a fine attack.
Right.
So Reed has to decide whether he wants to take any damage. I think he's probably going to end up like shrinking one of the other saplings or saving his Aimer Scout. Saving the Kitchen Finks doesn't really do a whole lot for you since it dying isn't a big deal. You could just shrink the Trigon Predator and take less damage.
Right. You still get a creature from that Finks,
you're
just
taking-
slightly smaller.
Taking 2.
I'll let you unblock it.
So Willie's trying to bluff Echo and Courage here and like
Plus 1 plus 2, right?
coming up
Yes.
short, but
So let's do it. This dice.
as they're figuring out the aftermath of the combat.
Stay. This
This-
trade. This.
This dies.
Oh yeah, 3-4 dice.
These 2 trade.
Trade here.
Persist.
So they
persist
both
here,
persist,
I take 2, gain 2. Still at 9. You're
And
at
again
10.
2, 10.
and then it looks like Reed is going to want to end up using the second Gleam just because he's got. Well, but apparently Reed has a Trigon Predator too. But
Yep.
Tap. Lose 3 life.
the second Gleam does make it pretty much academic, but it would be funny if the Trigon Predator got to attack Willie there.
Yeah.
Not that that would actually happen, but it
How did it get over there?
it was under the Soulfield
It
Reckless.
blocked that well?
Yeah.
All right. So draw step here for Reed Duke, but it looks like he's in the driver's seat to force a game 3.
Yeah, I mean, he can use Wrathy Trapper and then Gleam, and then he could just attack. Actually can just attack now. He doesn't even have to use the Gleam, though it was an option had he chosen to do so.
Yeah. I like that attack by Willie Adel. Sometimes you just mentally exhaust your opponent. So that is it. Reed Duke 1-1 versus Willie Adel here. Reed Duke fighting to try to stay 3-0, and of course so is Willie.
Yeah, and Willie's deck looks pretty good. He's got the Thallid deck. He does not have a Trump, but he does have Vertiloth the Ancient.
Okay.
And 2 Thallids, a Thallid Shell Dweller, Penumbra Spider, Imperiosaur, and a Sporloth Ancient as like the Thallid cards, with an Echo and Courage, which is kind of like a substitute Trump.
Yeah. Show off your magic colors by purchasing new Planeswalker apparel at mtgmerch.com. There they are. That Jace shirt looks pretty sweet.
It does.
I would wear that.
I don't know if I would choose Jace. Wait, no, I would definitely
Yes, you would
choose Jace.
absolutely choose Jace. So substitute Trump is what we were talking about.
Yeah,
and
with Echo and Courage.
It does something.
But also, Willie has 2 Trigon Predators and a Kitchen Finks. So, like, he's got some good 3-drops. Those are all very just strong on their own.
Yeah.
And double Air and Ephemeron, double Pestermite. So he's more like a blue-green beatdown deck with a Thallid sub-theme.
Right.
But looks like he's siding in some incremental growth for some incremental advantage, and then a second Echoing Courage. Or no, he looks like he's just messing around with Echoing Courage. But the incremental growth comes in, I guess, because Reed doesn't have a ton of like direct removal, and if the games go long, it's a decent late game card.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and really, Reed Duke is attempting to make the game go long. You know, cards in Willie's deck like Imperiosaur and those type of things lose a little bit when your opponent can go get Wrathy Trappers and such. But we saw this, you know, with a deck that Yuya Watanabe was playing in the same segment of the World Championship here, where he was making a whole bunch of Goblin tokens. Similar on Willie Adel's side, if he's trying to make a bunch of Thalids, you know, ways to make those a lot better, even if it's just temporary, are going to be really good.
Yeah.
The individual threats are pretty easy for Reed to deal with, really.
And he's got stuff like Apocryphite that he just wants to take out. Like that card is just not very effective against
Right.
a Rebels deck because they're
Take
not
one.
really attacking on the ground.
Right.
So, yeah. Well, it does have an Echoing Truth. I mean, Echoing Truth is a pretty swingy card when you're counting on your 3 Blight Speakers to get untapped by Gleam and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So Willie unsurprisingly choosing to play first.
All right. This is our last match here. Game 3, Reed Duke on his trail to redemption after a performance that was not up to his standards in the first World Championship, and now he's off to a quick start at 2-0 and looking to improve to 3-0. Willie Adel looking also for a strong finish here.
Yeah, and then Willie not suspending a Ephemeron on turn 2, or not having an Ephemeron to suspend on turn 2 is not something I'm sure he's happy about. And then Reed actually drew the Amru Scout on turn 2 to end up with a pretty nice curve here.
That's
so
nice.
The Rebel Searchers are really tough for blue-green. Willie has just no way to kill it.
Yeah.
If he has a Pestermite, he can Pestermite at upkeep and prevent Reed from using it, or Pestermite one of Reed's lands.
Sure.
So that is pretty nice. So it looks like he's representing drag down here. Also, you know, he has a drag down, so
Right.
it's fair to say that's a decent attack.
Especially because this isn't the turn that Reed Duke would want to use up his mana.
Yeah.
He needs to wait till he gets to 4 before he can start searching. So
Yeah, Willie does have Erratic Mutation, but is not. It's in his sideboard right now. So.
Oh, really?
Well, it's in his sideboard to start with. I don't know if he ended up playing it or not.
You'd think you'd bring it in, right? With all those 1 toughness Rebel Searchers.
Yeah, it would certainly be good, even if you're just hitting for 1. I think the reason he didn't main deck it is because he's got, you know, random 1-drops and whatnot. But I think against the Rebel Searchers, he might want it in the deck.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see if that Willie had put that into his deck. That is a great use for that card because you know you're actually going to kill the thing you want to kill, and it's an important thing.
So Reed is going to take a little damage here, but once you fetch up a Saltfield Recluse, you end up in a pretty good defensive spot. Even though and he's got the drag down for the Dust Wasp that I think Willie's going to end up playing on his next turn.
Okay.
Though depending on when he times it, Willie has an Echoing Courage, which could throw a wrench into things.
14.
All right, Reed Duke drops down to 14 after taking 4 in the air from a pair of Trigon Predators.
Yeah.
Is there a Petals of Insight in hand for Willie as well?
Oh, looks like he doesn't have a 5th land, so he's forced to suspend a Dust Wasp, which is not really what he wants to do.
Significantly more miserable.
Yeah, then the Recluse coming out is easily the best target to fetch with the Rebel Searcher for the first time.
Stem the bleeding immediately.
Yeah, it's basically, you know, stops 2 damage a turn, which gives Reed enough time to maybe kill the other Trigon Predator and stabilize behind extra cards in hand. Reed also has a Feud Killer's Verdict in hand, so he's got, as the game goes long, you know, he's got a lot of ways to pull ahead, but he has to kind of get there first, though he's not in a bad spot to do so. Then again, Willie does have all spells in hand, so I mean, granted, a lot of them cost a lot of mana, but Eternal Witness plus Echoing Courage plus Echoing Truth, there's a lot of tempo plays there.
Yeah, absolutely, especially with 2 flyers in the air. All right, land for Reed Duke, and then he just says go.
So Willie debating whether he wants to Echoing Truth, one of Reed's guys, ultimately deciding not to. So just hitting for 2. Reed does not have very many enchantments or artifacts that Willie can get
Yeah,
with.
unfortunately. Thankfully, two 3 flyers for 3 are just fine. And there's Penumbra Spider, another missed land drop here for Willie Adel.
Yeah, he did draw a 4-drop though, which is a good consolation prize instead of drawing a land. Looks like Reed is debating whether he wants to get an Amru Seekers and start hitting, but he is going to get to cast Feud Killer's Verdict on this turn, which Willie can Echoing Truth, but the 10 life is a pretty big deal.
Absolutely.
Willie can go off. We can witness back Echoing Truth the witness back Echoing Truth. I don't know if that's not going off. I don't know what it is.
That's not really going off.
It's an infinite blocker.
It's true.
2.
All right. 16 is what Willie Adel's going to drop down to for life totals, and here's Feud Killer's Verdict.
Reed's going to drop up to 22.
And create a 5/5 giant
22
token here.
I'll make a giant.
Yeah, Feud Killer's Verdict certainly is pretty good, especially in the games where it's not good. You probably need the 10 life anyway.
Yeah.
Like the games where you don't make the giant, but I don't think Reed has missed on making a giant very often in this draft.
All right, there's a land off the top finally for Willie Adel. A couple of turns in a row that he wasn't able to peel one, but here's a forest.
So I think what he wants to end up doing this turn is just hitting with all his creatures before blocks or whenever, Echoing Truthing the giant, and then he's just going to witness back the Echoing Truth after doing that. And this leaves him in actually like a decent spot. I mean, the 10 life Reed gained is certainly annoying, but he does get to hit for 4 here, and then having the witness does let him threaten to do some good attacks with Echoing Truth in hand.
Take 4.
18.
Right.
And he's also got so many spells that he really wants to just cast his spells here. So Witness is good, and then the Dust Wasp is coming into play in a couple turns.
Okay.
So Reed's got a ton of options, though. Take a look here. He's got multiple removal spells. He's got a Stir Their Pride as well, which if you entwine it, you can go ahead and get all your guys +2/+2 in lifelink. So, and he even drew a Thysis, which is not actually that close to casting. He needs a
Couple more swamps.
Yeah. Though, I mean, he can still cast one of his removal spells and use a Rebel Searcher this turn. Though I guess if he's smashing, he's not really going to do that.
Right.
Saltfield Recluse makes this attack decent. Willie's just going to force him to use it here, take 2, and then try to attack back. He's got the Trigon Predators, so with Echoing Courage out, that's +4 damage.
Yeah, it is. Not exactly plan A, but there it is. Meadow Boon on the side of Reed Duke. He's not evoking, he's just hard casting.
Yeah, it does stop the Penumbra Spider from attacking, and Reed is almost assuredly going to use a removal spell this turn. Though if he uses Drag Down instead of Hirobi's Whisper, which he might well do because he wants to save Hirobi's Whisper for something big. Yeah, Echoing Courage could have got him, but he's just going to take the damage. Willie really wishes he was adding to the board here, but unfortunately, his option is really just to cast Petals, since he doesn't really have any large things to cast. Luckily, Penumbra Spider is pretty good at stopping attackers.
Right.
I'd be surprised if he couldn't just take the 3 cards, though. If they're really bad, maybe he just puts them on the bottom. Looks like he's just botting them.
I think they were just land.
Yeah, which is kind of unfortunate. It might have been one spell, but it wasn't apparently a good one.
Yeah.
I have 3.
It's very rare that you see people put cards on the bottom with Petals. It's like, yeah.
Well, once you've cast your 5-mana spell, you really want to just have more spells.
That's right.
But if you just straight up miss, then you might as well.
All right, so end step, Reed Duke is going to use his Drag Down to take down one of the Trigon Predators.
And I think that he is in pretty good shape this game. The fact that he's gotten Willie down to like very few creatures, and the fact that he's got another removal spell in hand, and Stir the Pride especially, is really going to have an impact. So he can actually just attack with everything and Stir the Pride this turn, maybe? That doesn't seem that bad.
Just entwine it up.
14,
You just gain so much life.
Yeah.
And so even though Willie is, unsuspending a Dust Wasp, it's still not really going to do that much.
No, and Willie's sitting on one untapped forest, so there's just nothing he can
Yeah,
have here.
and Reed knows Willie has Echoing Truth in hand, so he wants to use Stir the Pride in a turn where Echoing Truth is not really going to do that much. So,
Willie's got to be bummed here as he goes to blocks.
yeah, I mean, he knows something's happening, and
Right.
it can't be good for him. He maybe suspects a Gleam, but regardless of what he blocks, Stir the Pride's going to do a very good job. So, It basically is whether he blocks the Meadow Boon or the Amru Scout, since if he suspects Gleam, he might block Amru Scout, which is reasonable since Reed has 3 of them.
Right.
But otherwise, he could actually have the call of Reed having Stir the Pride and blocking Saltfield Recluse, but you don't even care if your Penumbra Spider dies all that much, so...
Entwine. Oh, this one.
He said, "Oh, that one."
So Reed gains 16 life here, which is
The gleam.
well, certainly a lot worse than Willie was expecting.
5, 9,
6,
12.
like 12.
Yeah, so...
But like you said, he gained so much life in this
Yeah.
transaction that he just doesn't care.
Yeah, he's at 30, Willie's at 2.
Yeah.
And you get a spider.
And Willie even gets a spider. Though Reed didn't have to point that out. Reed could have let Willie
Yeah.
decline the spider token, but good guy Reed does go ahead and
I guess so.
and
I
give
wouldn't
the
have
2 for
pointed it out.
Well, would you have noticed?
I don't know. I might not have. I actually had to think about that for a second. I probably would have.
Yeah, I think you would have. But even though Willie isn't technically dead here, he's got enough blockers, he's got an Echoing Truth. It's going to be really hard for him to win from this position, especially since he's going to have to Echoing Truth the Amru Seekers here.
So,
There's no Blight Speakers on the side for Reed Duke here. So he doesn't have that unblockable win condition at the moment, but
Petals.
He's casting Petals. He's unsure of whether he wants the cards, which is not a good sign.
I think it's incremental blight and a couple of excuse me.
Growth and a Thallid and a
Incremental blight
land.
would have been fine.
Yeah, he would take that. That one he
Yeah.
might actually win, but now he can't even attack. He just has to pass the turn. Unfortunately, Penumbra Spider makes a black token, not a white token.
Right.
Of course, Reed does have a removal spell, so he does. Well, Saltfield Recluse isn't lethal, so I guess he doesn't get to kill him that way.
No, but he gets to force Willie to use his Echoing Truth on
yeah.
the Seekers.
And then next turn, the Seekers are lethal.
Yeah.
So we've got a pretty good game here, but it looks like Reed is going to take himself out of lethal range with the Stir the Pride and then just force Willie to pretty ineffectively bounce his creature. I mean, Willie has to do it, but that's not really a path to winning.
Right. And he's now left up the ability to search with his Amru Scout as well.
So he can Petals and try to find... Does he have an erratic mutation? Willie does not. He might have sided it in, but he's Petalsing and hoping to see something sweet. Well, looks like he kept him, so might not be the end of the world here.
Yeah, he might not be the end of Willie's world.
Yeah.
He just passes a turn back, though. It's a Pestermite.
Okay. Yeah, but getting to the fact that Reed gets to search out a Blight Speaker now.
Yeah.
Means that it's going to be really hard for Willie to beat him before
Yes.
Blight Speaker goes
He has
active.
a turn.
Yeah. Looks like he's getting Avian Changing and just going for lethal also because he has
Oh, okay.
Hirobi's Whisper,
Okay.
which also works. I mean,
Yes.
he's got a wealth of options here.
He sure does.
Reed has a bunch of different doors he can go through, and they all lead to the same place, which is him
Which is
3-0ing the draft.
3-0.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a fun place to visit.
I mean, some Magic matches, you have a lot of doors you go through, and one wins you the game, and all the rest lose you the game. But sometimes it's the other way around.
Yeah.
So I think Reed is in pretty good shape here. And
He's lining up his attacks.
yeah.
And there's a Pestermite to tap down the Seekers.
Okay, so now that Willie's tapped out, Reed can actually consider doing a different attack since he
He drew Absorb
he drew an
Fist
Absorb
anyway.
Fist.
Yeah.
Well,
And that's it. Reed Duke.
the gratuitous
improves-
top deck of the round.
Sure.
I mean,
like this still had all those.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean-
so Reed Duke improves to 3-0 now. And, we've been talking about it. I get a look at him in the camera. He's got a big smile on his face
Yeah.
there.
He's gotta
And,
be happy.
Yeah, you got to be happy. You mentioned earlier, he now has more wins in this event than he did in the last one.
yeah, but it's only been 3 rounds.
Yeah, right. So he's a little bit better. Welcome back to the booth. Marshall
Everyone.
Sutcliffe here with Luis Scott-Vargas. So, this is one of the storylines we've been keeping a close eye on throughout as we've been leading up into the actual start of events here for the World Championship is Reed Duke. I mean, he had a huge year.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, just the fact that his performance in San Diego, Pro Tour San Diego, Pro Tour Dragon's Maze, earned him both platinum and a spot in the World Championships is huge.
It was massive for him, and again, he we saw him at last year, and he was making lists of the things that he wanted to work on, and he was really, really focused, and it paid off as throughout the course of the whole year. He really had a great year. He had 52 pro points or something. He's a platinum pro. I mean, really, really great stuff. But this is kind of a spotlight for that, right? Where you get to come in here and say, no, I do belong here, and I am gonna, I'm gonna show you guys how much I've improved.
I mean, what the World Championships really is among other things, is a reward for having a good year.
Yes.
When you have a good year, you also get to play in the World Championships, which is insane.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I mean, we play a lot of these type of games, Magic, other games like this, where
mostly Magic.
There's a lot of variance involved. And
is there?
There's plenty.
There's a fair amount.
There's probably more for me than for you, but for somebody like Reed, sometimes you just have a tough tournament, right? I don't think that anybody's saying that he played horribly or that he did something, obscenely wrong during the course of last year's World Championship. Sometimes it just happens like that. But it's interesting to me because normally that would be viewed negatively, right? We would say, well, no, you don't want to think about it that way. But it might have actually been a positive for him to have a big downswing on the variance spike during that time because maybe it makes him focus and work harder for the rest of the year.
I mean, you would never choose to have a bad event, but
Right.
given that you have, sometimes if you take that and you actually put it to use in a positive way, you actually get something out of it.
Right, and that's rare. A lot of people don't do that. It's a skill.
A lot of people, it's actually a spiral where
Yes.
bad events lead to more bad events.
Right.
And that's what you really want to avoid.
Right, and I think that Reed really typifies the best approach to get out of that situation, which is work.
Yeah.
Right, anytime things kind of go off the rails for me, I'll watch a draft video from you. Yeah, I need some entertainment, right, to make me laugh a little bit. But I'll talk to people that I know that are better than me at drafting, and I'll say these are the things that I'm thinking right now. Let's talk. And even if I'm wrong or I'm right or whoever's right, it doesn't really matter. The point is you get your brain working and you get forward momentum as far as actually making tangible improvements. And I think that Reed has always been on that trajectory, and I think that his performance last year might have even just spiked it up a bit, and he's starting to see the results from that already.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when people ask me how to get better, the main reason is, or the main answer isn't as exciting as people hope, but it really is practice.
Right.
It's not just random practice, but it is practice. I mean, it is putting hours in.
Right, and now at 3-0, Reed Duke is starting to get a lot of the stuff. All right. We've got some great stuff coming up here for you guys in just a minute. Maybe even for you.
Who knows?
We have an announcement coming up at our news desk. It's the Hall of Fame. So the ballots have been out for about a month. They were collected a few weeks ago, and the winners, potentially the man sitting next to me. This is your first year eligible for the Hall of Fame, and I know you had a lot of push on the social media and stuff, and so for your fans at home and plus everybody else that was on the list to make it in the Hall of Fame, we're going to get to find that out very, very shortly.
Indeed.
All right, are you excited? Are
I
you
am.
nervous? Are you a little nervous? All right, well, let's send it back to the news desk where BDM is over there along with Rich, and we're going to find out right now who this year's class of Hall of Fame inductees are. Don't go anywhere.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the news desk. I'm going to make you wait. Yes, I am. I'm going to make you wait for about 5 more minutes because I've got a guest with me in just a moment. But first, let's wrap up what happened in Modern Masters because that's the end of that format. And as Ben Stark said, why can't we do 3 more of those? They seem to go just fine. But no, afraid not. We go on to Standard next. So let's take a look at our scoreboard and let's show you what happened in the first 3 rounds. On the left, Pod 1. The 4 matches were Josh Utter-Leighton against Eric Froelich. That went 2-0 to Froelich, and that means that he advances to 2-1, and Josh Utter-Leighton, the defending reigning player of the year, is at 1-2. You saw Reed Duke defeat Willie Adel, which means that Reed is sitting pretty at 3-0, and Willie, who honestly didn't think he had much of a prayer in that 3rd round, is at 2-1. Also on the left of your screen, in the basement, David Ochoa against Dmitry Budakov, and it is the Russian who is still looking for his first win, the Magic Online champion, having a Reed-esque debut, one might say, at 0-3 here after the first format. He'll be glad to get to Standard and get himself self-centered, ready for the second format. And that left on that side of the bracket Shahar Shenhar against Shuhei Nakamura. And that, by the way, that is a very impressive win for Shahar Shenhar. There is a reason that he has 3 Grand Prix titles and 6 Grand Prix top 8s already in a very, very young career. I think we may look back on that match, Shahar 2, Nakamura 0, as one of the turning points early in this 12-round tournament. On the right of your screen, the second draft pod. Let's look at those. Ben Stark 2-0 over Brian Kibler. Kibler threw the kitchen sink, but of course it was not enough. Ben Stark, a monster deck, 3-0 and in tremendous shape. But as he says, now I've got to go and play with 60 cards. It's not fair. All right, next, Yuya Watanabe against Craig Wesco. Looked at Paul Rietzel. Hi to Paul, former Pro Tour champion, indeed champion in this very room, no less, from 2010 in Amsterdam. And he said, you watch out for Craig Wesco. He's 2-1 in a format he was not expected necessarily to be strong in, and now he gets to play 6 of the next 9 rounds in constructed. So Wesco up to 2-1, and the defending champion work to do at 1-2. Then you have Li Shi Chan against Martin User. Huge story there. Lee from Hong Kong has his first win, which means it is User on pod 2 who is 0-3. And what a climb back it will have to be if Martin User, with his many, many Grand Prix top 8s, 2 Pro Tour top 8s, hundreds of lifetime pro points, if he is going to get back into the mix. Desperately sad and worrying times for User in this one. And that just leaves the match between Tom Martell and the other Czech player, Stanislav Sivka. And as you can see, it was Sivka who was victorious 2-1, so Martell 1-2. And that, boys and girls, wraps up Modern Masters from the World Championship. Now, as you can see on your screen, sitting beside me is a man who is doing very nicely, thank you. And Modern Masters, I would say Modern Masters has been kind to you, but that undersells it well and truly. Reed Duke, 3-0. We saw you talk about your draft in detail in the second round. But, I mean, you'd have bitten anyone's hand off to say 3-0 against this field, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, you can never count on something like 3-0, but I was pretty happy after the draft. Feel like I did the best I could. Yeah, and true to form, all 3 matches were brutal, 3 games. Nobody made it easy on me.
I talked to Josh Utter-Leighton yesterday, and he said that this field, more than almost any other in Magic, is one where mistakes are kept to a minimum, and even small mistakes are punished mightily because you see the door just ajar and you're all ruthless, trained assassin killers, and you just kick the door down, as it were, and sort of drive through because the edges are so small. Does it feel like there's a lot of pressure because of that? I have to be perfect, not just really good.
Oh, yeah, so much pressure in that regard. In fact, my round 1 against Josh, I won game 1, and game 2 I thought was in the bag. He missed land drops, I was way ahead, and he attacked me with his flying creature. I said -2, -0 with Saltfield Recluse. And then afterwards he plays Murderous Redcap to kill my creature. If I had left the Recluse untapped, that could never happen, but that was the start of his comeback, and 20 minutes later he ended up winning the game, but something as simple as that can be life or death.
Does that prey on you when things like that happen? Did it used to?
It just kind of is what it is. It's very difficult to play a perfect game of Magic, and a lot of times you can make 1 or 2 mistakes and still look back and be happy with the way you played. So not to excuse a mistake like that, but the worst thing that you can do is let it tear you apart emotionally or psychologically and compound the mistake with something bigger. So when that happened, it was just kind of like, I'll learn from it, and the same exact thing came up in game 3, and I did it right this time. But it's just important to look forward rather than back on a mistake like that.
Okay, well, I've started making the list for you for this time. Saltfield Recluse, Murderous Redcap.
Sure.
Anything else you want to add to that?
I feel okay about that.
You feel okay about the rest? Okay, well, that's for you. Free gift. You can add that to the collection.
Sure.
For those of you who don't know the story, last year, Reed went away and did a bit of soul searching, it's fair to say, and in the deep recesses of the night went, this is everything that could have changed things if I'd done it perfectly rather than just really well. And I think it takes not just humility, but it takes a real self-awareness that so few people are prepared to do that to themselves, because no one likes to think that they do things wrong. And you ended up with a pretty big list, to be fair. It was a big piece of paper.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you though, being hard on myself is, it can be difficult, but what's worse is to look back on a tournament where you got last place and say, yep, I couldn't have done anything,
Sure.
Maybe I'll go back next year and get last place. That wasn't an okay solution for me, so better to learn from it.
And you really did learn from it. You were already a tremendous player, obviously. I mean, you got to the Players' Championship last year, which by definition put you in the most exalted company in the game. But since then, things have gone from strength to strength. There was an awful lot riding on the last couple of rounds of Pro Tour Dragon's Maze, wasn't there?
Yes.
Not just in terms of money or prestige, but it was a real couple of hours of life path for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it sure was. It was the deepest I'd ever gone in a Pro Tour, with not just the top 8 or a good finish on the line, but it was the last tournament of the season, platinum at stake, Players' Championship maybe at stake. Yeah, it was something else.
Yes, you looked absolutely wrung out at the end of that. I don't think it's rare that I've seen someone so finished as a player. I think Remy Fortier possibly in Valencia 07 was the closest I've ever seen to someone who, basically, if I'd said, could you play one more turn of Magic? I think you'd have been close to, no, not another one.
When times like that come up, you don't leave anything on the table.
That's right. So here we are again, 1 year on, and you're in not just much better shape because you're at 3-0, obviously, but you seem much happier, you seem much more at home with the setting, the setup, the company, just everything seems to be aligning pretty neatly.
Yeah, I played my first Pro Tour at this venue.
Wow, that's true. Yeah, I had forgotten that was right here. It's kind of different, though, when there's just 16 of you in this really quiet, intimate environment.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Do you think that has contributed to the style of play? It feels like it's the feature match area is always a very busy place with cameras and wires and spotters and people with headsets on. But here, there isn't that buzz of 200 other matches going on just across the way. You've already had experience of that last year in Seattle. It is just unlike anything else, isn't it, in Magic?
A lot of eyes on you.
Absolutely. A lot of eyes on him. And right now, he is at 3-0, one of the co-leaders here at the World Championship 2013. Reid, best of luck with the rest. And of course, from 3-0, that's a fantastic launching pod to head to the top 4. Maybe
appreciate
one
it,
day.
Rich.
Thanks
Thank
a lot,
you.
Reid. Now
Now
one
let's
day,
hear about the Hall of Fame.
it is. Now, who knows? He might be in the Hall of Fame one day, but I don't think this year. Why don't we bring in the Pro Tour historian, Mr. Brian David Marshall. Now, between you and me, while he's coming in, he doesn't like to sort of boast about this whole Pro Tour historian thing. He wears it very, very lightly. But I know that this is one of his proudest and most honoured moments of his year. So here to tell you who is in the 2013 class of the Magic Pro Tour Hall of Fame, the historian, Mr. Brian David Marshall.
All right. So we've been, I think to the surprise of nobody, the first member of the 2013 Pro Tour Hall of Fame class is Luis Scott-Vargas. Very, very well deserved. A Pro Tour champion, 5-time Pro Tour top 8 competitor, just a tremendous player. I mean, there you get a look at him in Berlin holding his trophy, finished in the top 10 of the Player of the Year race 4 times. He's got countless Grand Prix top 8s, or we can count them, it's 10. But just a phenomenal player, and
And we can get into his resume in a little bit, but I think we should announce the full list. Let's give everyone who's in.
Very excited to say that William Jensen is in the 2013 class of the Pro Tour Hall of Fame. He missed by just 1 vote last year. He made it in this year quite cleanly. And the third member of this year's class of the Pro Tour Hall of Fame is Ben Stark of the United States.
Wow, fantastic.
It is a 3-person class. To get into the Hall of Fame, you needed to have more than 40% of the vote. To recap, the 3 players are Luis Scott-Vargas of the United States, William Jensen of the United States, and Ben Stark of the United States.
That's fantastic. So congratulations to all three of them. Let's now get in a bit more detail. And this is your chance, again, as the historian, teach me, because sure, I've been around a while, but there's lots to learn about these guys. Let's start with Luis Scott-Vargas. What you got? What do you want to tell us?
Well, I mean, there you see Luis at his kind of breakthrough Pro Tour moment when he won Pro Tour Berlin. That was his first top 8. It had been something that you were, expecting for a while. He'd gone top 8 of nationals back to back, including a national championship, and then kind of it was like there were some good finishes on the Pro Tour, but he hadn't quite broken through. And then he got there, and then in the quarterfinals found himself down, of course, 0-2, and had to overcome that and get all the way to the win in Berlin. It was amazing.
It's extraordinary to think now that there was a period in the game round about sort of 06, 07 that he was the sidekick. He was the best friend of Paul Chion. He was Chiontourage, if you like, and they traveled everywhere together, and they were this fantastic team. But people tended to think, in terms of the Hall of Fame, that one day it would be Paul, perhaps, who would be in there,
or certainly both of them.
Yeah.
I remember very vividly being in the booth at Pro Tour Berlin, and Paul Chion just sitting in the front row watching the coverage and cheering louder than anybody in that room for Luis Scott-Vargas. And of course, they broke through together at nationals when they made the national team in 2006.
Yeah. In Berlin, in his winner interview on podcast, as I was doing then, Luis said, "I finally got fed up of playing the wrong deck because I fancied playing it, and decided it was much more fun to play the right deck and then win with it."
Right.
And that was a huge sort of just shift in his perception of what he ought to be doing in the game.
It's probably not exactly accurate, but I recall a stubborn adherence to playing Loxodon and Hierarchs, regardless of what format he was playing back then.
That sounds about right, for sure. So what are his great strengths, would you say?
I think one of the things that makes Luis such a clear-cut top of the class for this year is not only does he have the resume as just one of the game's great players, again, a top 16 3-year median finish at one point, banned in fantasy pro tours, people like to say. It's like, no, we're not going to play with LSV. That's just not fair. Yeah. He has these tremendous, community contributions. And has really changed the face of the Pro Tour, or changed the way people compete at the Pro Tour. There have always been super teams at this level of competition, but they'd kind of gone away, and we hadn't seen a lot of it. You talk a lot about, people. I remember you would talk about is American Magic dimming?
Sure.
And when Luis found himself qualified for the Pro Tour and coming regularly, the idea of Team Channel Fireball, which is such a present thing, didn't exist. Nope. Channel Fireball didn't exist. He put together that group that formed around Chiontourage, as they were called, and really would change the way people came to Pro Tours. They could get there a week early. They'd rent a house. They'd prepare. They'd have a pretty rigid demands upon the players, and for 2 years they just when I was talking to LSV about it in an interview, he just said they were kind of just had a huge edge on the field, and now you see more and more teams and super teams forming to be able to recapture some of that competitive advantage they'd ceded to those guys.
Yeah, for sure. Like 2010, 2011, we weren't really looking at what people were playing. We just wanted to know what Fireball were playing, and then could anybody beat it? Had anyone else figured out the same thing, or had they figured it out and found a way to sort of next level? Again, I mean, it was absolutely the focal point, as you say. And I think perhaps the biggest, and we'll talk about this again in a little while, I'm sure, perhaps Paris in 2011 with Core Blade was perhaps one of the defining moments of a team's dominance.
I also think about World Championships in 2011 in San Francisco, again, where they got 4 players into the top 8. And then ran it, kind of one by one, ran into a buzzsaw of a terrible matchup.
Sure.
But again, just dominating the Swiss. And of course, you can't think about Luis Scott-Vargas just for a moment without acknowledging Pro Tour San Diego and his just incredible clean sweep of the Swiss rounds.
Yeah, because it was essentially impossible, and it remains essentially impossible to do that. And sort of at 8-0 overnight, think it might have been against Gabriel Nassif the next morning. And that was round 9. And he did that, and then he won another 2, and then it was like, well, okay. 5 more to go. But the thing is, you don't even play 5, so it was still never going to happen.
Right.
And then it came into view, and he went, I quite like playing Magic. I might play some Magic. And then he played some more Magic, and yeah, Bertil Elfgren, I'm really sorry. He got into the Hall of Fame despite you not voting for him. That was the round 16 opponent for Louis Scott-Vargas, I believe, at that event. And ultimately, of course, couldn't quite finish it off because a certain German of my acquaintance, Mr. Gertzen, got in the way at that event. But a phenomenal thing. Let's just take a look, by the way, at the percentage of votes that got cast for Louis, if we can, up on our big board, because it is pretty mighty. Look at that, 95.63.
Mighty, but at the same time, 5% of you out there, a little embarrassing. Really, for 5% of you,
Well-
you should just put your heads down right now and take a time out.
Well, come on, 98% of the selection committee. we all voted for
Well,
him.
almost all.
Someone forgot.
If you did not vote for Louis Scott-Vargas, this was not your shining moment. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, all right. But I hope it's not all you're going to say overall, because we've got 2 more great players to talk about.
Absolutely.
And I'm actually going to shut up, listeners. I really am. I promise you, because you're going to talk at length about William Jensen.
William Jensen is the player's player. This is a guy who, when he came along, he was just really one of the best players in the game. I remember meeting him during, I think it was the 99-2000 season at Grand Prix Cannes. I'd kind of known him, but I was there with my team and we were playing, and he was there with David Williams, Dan O'Mahony Schwartz, and himself as Remember the Titans, Tighttans.
Obviously.
And he basically showed us how to team Rochester draft, and it was so amazing to watch, and it was obvious that he was better at Magic than all but a handful of people I'd met. And I'd met a lot of people in Magic at that point.
For sure.
Still. Just a tremendous player. And then when I was doing coverage in 2003, when I started, he was just utterly dominant. He was utterly dominant. He was in the top 4 of Venice. He top 8s in San Diego, in Chicago, in this ridiculous top 8 with Kai and John and Nikolai Herzog, and then wins Pro Tour Boston as a member of the Rockefellers.
Let's take a look at his resume.
There you get a look at him.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of his career stats. 222, I believe, lifetime pro points.
There you get a look at the Rockefellers. That's William Jensen on the left, Brock Parker in the middle, and Matt Lindy. Yeah, Matt Lindy on the right.
Rockefellers, good name.
Yeah, what a terrific name. He also won a Masters championship in 2000, 2001.
So just take a moment. Please explain the Masters, because it's so hard, because obviously we don't do them anymore, but it's really tough to put those into a historical context.
They're very similar to the Players' Championship or the current World Championship.
Okay.
They were a little bit of a bigger field, but it was really the top 32 players in the world. It was a nice high cash purse event. They were attached to Pro Tours. And it sort of became the players, the Pro Players Club. It morphed into that, but it was this opportunity for the top players to be rewarded for traveling to these events and do all that stuff. And so you would have just these great players. He won the first Masters.
That was the first, Brian.
That was the first Masters. That was at Madison Square Garden in New York. He's also won a Grand Prix. Other than an invitational, he's just won just about everything there is to win.
Okay, let's take a look at how he panned out within the selection committee and the player committee. See his votes for you. Let's bring that up. So here we are, 31 years old. He received almost 60% of the overall vote, 65% from the selection committee, just under 50% from the player committee. And BDM, you have to feel that is purely about a longevity issue, because I actually think that he's in is pretty much a validation of the system, because I'll be honest and say, I never saw him play at his peak. I didn't even really follow enough coverage to say that I recognized him as a fan at his peak. And yet over the last couple of years, lots of people like me have listened to enough people who really do know to work out that this is what should be the outcome, and that the Hall is a better place with him in.
When you hear John Finkel talk about, his respect for William Jensen as a player, you start seeing, and when you see, like, we show that picture with Owen Turtenwald and Reed Duke, they teamed up for a team event, recently. You also see that, this sort of spanning generations of Magic players. But again, he's someone who goes, way back to the early days of the game, and really after his win in Boston, was kind of gone from the game not too long after that, gone off to, pursue, real world pursuits, and so yeah, he did fade from a lot of people's memories, and a consensus kind of built up, sort of similar to what we saw with Steve O'Mahony Schwartz.
Sure. Luis obviously would have felt, I think, that he had a great chance of getting in. I imagine William Jensen was a bit less certain, and I imagine that he quite liked getting an email.
Yeah, he was, obviously something very emotional for him. He missed by 1 vote last year. Just that close. People, it was, I think, very heartbreaking for him. He's, been playing a lot, been very visible, made it in this year. When I talked to him about it, he said, I was, honestly, I'm not ashamed to admit it, I was moved to tears to get into the Hall of Fame. And he's just one of the great players, and we are going to see him take full advantage of his invitations to the Pro Tours. He is, sometimes some of the older players who've moved away from the game. This is someone who's very much moving back towards the game. And I think we're going to see him at a lot of events. And I would not be at all surprised to see him do exceptionally well. He works with the Team Star City Black guys and John Finkel and Tom Martell and those guys. So I would, I expect to see some pretty big things from him.
Okay.
Now on his Pro Tour return.
So that's 2, and that leaves 1 more member of the 2013 class, and that, of course, is Ben Stark. So let's take a look. Take us through the gigantic resume again.
So just, I'm going to stop for a second. So we see a trophy shot of Ben Stark there, Pro Tour Paris champion. This is the first class of the Pro Tour Hall of Fame that is made up entirely of Pro Tour champions. Wow. This has not happened in the history of the Pro Tour Hall of Fame. You see people with, vast resumes, but you have the Masashio Isos with 5 Pro Tour top 8s or 6 Pro Tour top 8s.
Or a Kenji
or
Shuhei.
Olivier Ruel, all different players in different classes. Alan Comer in the first, I was like, the first year, they all had Pro Tour top wins. No, Alan Comer is the outlier there. This is the first year. Winning a Pro Tour is really hard, really difficult, even for Hall of Famers. So this is the first class that's all Hall of Famers. That all Pro Tour champions, and there you see Ben Stark, the Paris 2011 champion. Someone else who I really got a chance to watch a lot when I started doing coverage during the 2004 season. It was pretty clear there were a lot of great players at that point. There was Nikolai Herzog and Gabriel Nassif, and it was like, right there with them was Ben Stark. He was just dominating constructed events. Even though I believe I think he might have broken through in a limited Pro Tour for his first, but he was just this phenomenal player. And again, someone who stepped away from the game, and there was a real absence there in the middle.
Yeah. And for him, because as soon as he came back, he said, I was so dumb. I stopped playing Magic. Yeah. What was I thinking?
And really ground his way back to the game. Yeah. Playing in PTQs, going to Grand Prix, and just getting his feet back under him. And since he's done that, it's just been a tremendous player. Obviously the win in Paris with Team Channel Fireball, and then most recently the top 4 finish at Pro Tour Gatecrash.
Yeah, and he just casually popped into Italy last weekend, made the top 8 of the M14 Limited Grand Prix, right, because he's Ben Stark. And I think one of the interesting things there is that even though, again, like with William Jensen, I didn't really know him from the sort of 03-04 era, right, I would have him in the Hall of Fame just from since I've really got to know him in 09 and 2010, the last 4 years. He's just so clearly better than just about anyone else at what he does, which is phenomenal. A little idea.
Yes.
You know that Luis is on the coverage team?
I do. Very exciting.
And you know that Ben Stark is like 3-0 at this event?
I do.
That means
also very exciting.
In the room.
Oh, excellent. Maybe we should bring one of them in here and talk to them a little bit.
Luis, get over here. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to welcome to the desk one of the new 2013 Hall of Fame. What do they call them? Hall of Fame elect.
Hall of Fame elect.
Here he is, Mr.
Not
Lewis.
official yet.
Yeah. As someone found out.
Congratulations, Luis.
Thank you.
Very, very well deserved.
Yeah. You go to you talk to him. I see him all the time.
So I've already covered some of this in an interview I did with you, but talk to people a little bit about your Magic in your life. I mean, you've been playing for almost 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, I learned how to play when I was 11 in 1994, and even though I didn't play consecutively until now, I've played it or followed it and probably thought about it just about now 2/3 of my life.
Well, since that time when you started playing, what do you think the longest period of time you've gone without playing? Thinking, touching, being involved with Magic cards is?
Maybe a couple months.
Yeah.
When I wasn't playing at all, but even then it doesn't take very much to I wonder what's going on in tournaments these days, that sort of thing.
So you were always interested in that competitive aspect of the game.
I mean, not immediately, but even in the years that I wasn't playing, I was still looking at sideboard.com and kind of seeing what was happening. I drafted a couple times at kind of the store in San Francisco where Ben Rubin and Ken Ho and Dan Clegg all played, so I kind of knew who those guys were and knew that they played in Pro Tours, so I did a little bit of coverage.
Are those the players you looked up to early on in your career?
I mean, it was certainly enlightening playing against them and realizing how much better they were than I was. So.
And did you already have that sort of that characteristic that we always see in successful Pro Tour players that you wanted to learn something, not just I got so unlucky to lose there, but how do I get better? What do I do? What are they doing that I don't do?
I certainly spent time it's not like it's only maybe 10 or so drafts with them around, but that was enough time for me to realize I had a long ways to go. So certainly getting beaten did not diminish my enthusiasm.
Yeah. Now, the first time I remember seeing you at an event was 2005 in Pro Tour London.
Right.
And that was this really just incredibly epic battle between you and Tommy Wallamies in the last round of the Swiss.
Yeah, that remains one of the most exciting matches I've ever played, where I ended up thinking I was going to deck him, but then he hindered his own spell to the top to not get decked, and then I had no
to
cards
the
in my
bottom,
deck.
which happened to be the top.
Right. And then I decked on my turn. So it was pretty wild.
Yeah. And so that wasn't your first Pro Tour. You'd actually qualified.
Yeah, I'd played in one previous Pro Tour. It was Pro Tour San Diego, which was Mirrored and Dark Steel a couple months earlier.
And then at some point you're playing, I guess off and on qualifying, but come Nationals 2006.
Yeah, it was I had met Paul Cian about a year before, and we had started hanging out a lot and talking a lot, and then we both went to Nationals. We roomed together, and we actually just picked up the Solar Flare deck the night before. We didn't know what to play, and then he ended up getting first, and I got third. So. And
that was really your introduction to the big stage, where people were paying attention to what you guys were doing and wanted to talk to you. How long did it take you to feel like you had solid footing on the Pro Tour at that point? From there,
2007 was really the first year I played all the Pro Tours, and it was at the end of 2007 at Worlds when I had to go 7-1 on day 2 because it was 2-day Worlds then because it was at the Javits Center, and I ended up going 7-1 on day 2 and hitting level 7, which is the difference between level 6 and 7 is all your flights paid for versus none of your flights paid for. And so it's the difference between me going to all the Pro Tours or maybe not going to all the Pro Tours. So at that point, I was like, man, I can really do this. And then Paul hit level 8 as well that same year, so we were both ready to go.
That's awesome. And then obviously Berlin is your big breakthrough moment on the Pro Tour.
And as Mark Herwolds told me actually afterwards, he's like, once you top 8 at a Pro Tour, it gets easier. So, which it apparently did.
Does it really though?
I mean, I think that you think you're playing about the same, or you're trying to, but I do think that having top 8 at a Pro Tour does make things easier. You have a little more experience, and your opponents know you've top 8 at a Pro Tour. They know you've won a Pro Tour in this case. That does impact how they play.
Do you feel a little bit of an internal loosening also, maybe, that you've sort of gotten past that level already?
It certainly reaffirmed my decision to keep playing. I was kind of wavering at that point just because I hadn't had any great finishes that year.
Right. And then just quickly, from there, how long until that turn, goes into Kyoto and you guys are forming Channel Fireball and that team? What was that like?
Well, I mean, part of it is we had to form a team because my previous team, like Paul mainly, had gone, and then Raptor, Josh, and Webb started being qualified for all the Pro Tours, and that would really helped. And once we got that going, we added a bunch of people that we liked, and that's kind of how the team ended up. Paulo, I'd always wanted to test with. So.
Right. And you guys know how it's played out from there at home. You've seen them at every event. You've played their decks at every Friday Night Magic. So congratulations to Luis Scott-Vargas, the class leader for the 2013 Pro Tour Hall of Fame.
Yeah, fantastic. Great work, Luis, and great to have you with us this week. Congratulations on being not quite good enough to play with this lot. Thanks to Luis. And that means that we have another Hall of Famer coming our way. And this is the man who is undefeated so far this weekend at the World Championship. He's 3-0, and it is, of course, Mr. Ben Stark, Florida's finest right now, that is for sure. So, Ben, welcome to the desk, and of course, congratulations from everyone around the world on the Hall of Fame.
Thanks.
What was going through your head when you were waiting out that call?
Oh man, can't even do it justice. I thought I had a pretty good shot at getting in, but I certainly wasn't a lock like Luis. So I'm sitting here just like, oh, please let me make it, please let me make it, please let me make it. Me and William Jensen both were like, constantly checking for the Twitter ballots to see, people who posted if we were on their ballot, counting.
Were you keeping a spreadsheet?
Yeah, it was bad.
Well, you like Luis, you've been playing since you were, the proverbial small child, right? You've been playing the game forever.
I started the exact same time he did it, from what I just heard in the interview. I was 11, 6th grade. Actually, I think I might have been 10. I turned 11 October of 6th grade, 94. But I started right then, right in 6th grade, right when I was turning 11.
What attracted you to the game?
Truthfully, my friends were just all playing it. I just started at a new school for middle school, and, a lot of the kids in my class were playing it. And they just, hey, come check out this game. Cool, sure.
Right. I believe you referred to it as a smart kid school.
Well, I was in gifted and everything, and it was like a special, gifted. It was a special program I went to for middle school for really advanced math, and obviously, it was very popular among the smart kids. If you went to the more lower level classes, people weren't as interested in magic. But in gifted in 6th grade, there was maybe a third of the boys were playing it. It was very popular.
And so, what describe a little bit, you talked about how, much it meant to you to get in and how you were really sweating that. What is the role Magic's played in your life from '94 until you're getting fitted for a ring?
If you were to just measure me as a person, after my parents, it probably played the second biggest role in my life. I've been playing it for almost 20 years, and I'm 29, turning 30 this year. Nothing's really influenced my life more. I was playing my first Pro Tour back in 1999 when I was 15. My whole life has pretty much been competitive Magic.
And what about that competition is so appealing to you? Because you walked away from it, right? You were done, and then you were drawn right back. What is it?
The competition is really what made me walk away from it. It's a decision I really regret, but I was playing really well in 2004, playing a lot, practicing a lot. I started to become pretty successful with some other things, and I realized I couldn't commit the time to Magic that I needed to still play at that level. And people had just started talking about me as one of the best players in the world and all of this, and I just didn't want to come and not play that well. And then, I always missed it though. After that, I always followed the coverage. I always played on Moto. Everyone knows, Magic Online is my favorite thing in the world. So, I never stopped drafting or anything like that. That would be crazy. Come on.
Well, you're in Florida. It's like the state bird.
So then, after sweating the coverage for a little bit and whatnot, when I was about 25 or so, I was like, you know what? Who cares if I'm one of the best players in the world? I miss the Pro Tour. I love following the coverage. I love playing against good players and, playing in the Pro Tours. They're so fun. So I was like, I'll just see if I can queue again and see if I'm good enough, with only playing 20 hours a week instead of 50,
One thing that I'm really interested in you is that a lot of the best players of anything like the fact of them being the best and like the gulf between themselves and lesser players. One of the things that distinguishes you in terms of community outreach is that I've never seen a player that you don't want to make better at Limited. You go out of your way to help people all the time.
Yeah, well, I don't get that so much. I agree with you that most people are like that, but I don't understand it because, let's say you're a professional boxer and you went down and fought somebody who was 2-12 and an amateur and whatever. You're going to beat them, right? That's not fun. To me, it's fun to play the other best players, to play good players, round after round after round, guys who know what's going on in the game and are thinking about what I'm thinking thinking about, and I can try and think like, what do I need to do, to get them to do things and stuff. To me, Magic isn't fun if my opponent doesn't really know what his cards do, I mean, imagine playing chess and you're strategizing a few moves ahead, and then your opponent like tries to move the knight the wrong way, and it doesn't in a spot it can't even go, and you just thought 10 moves ahead. You just thought like I'm gonna do this, it's gonna make him do this and do this, and then afterwards he tries to move the knight 3 moves sideways where it doesn't go. How is that? I don't understand how that's fun to people.
And not even just fun. I mean, almost selfishly, as someone who thinks about the game on a level that you do, you're really looking for your opponents to play in a way that you expect good players to play. It's going to facilitate your success.
Well, to me, that's what makes the game fun. I mean, look, I know everybody enjoys Magic for different reasons.
Sure.
I'm not saying that my way is the right way or anything like that. But yeah, like you said, it's almost selfish. It appears so unselfish, but really, like, I can't enjoy Magic if my opponents don't know what's going on in the games, if they're not making good plays, if they're not, trying, really competitive to beat me.
Right.
For me, I've got to be able to play good games and good matches. That's why I came back to the Pro Tour, because as much as I love Magic Online, you don't get that same playing for top 8 against a really good player who really knows everything, and the battle back and forth on Magic Online. You have to come to the Pro Tour for that.
Well, as someone who was among the people in 2004 saying you were on that short list of the best players in the world, I can tell you how happy I've been to see you playing again, and how proud I will be to call your name out when we're bringing people up to the podium to get their rings at the ceremony in Dublin. You have some lunch to eat and a tournament to continue winning at 3-0, Ben Stark, 2013 class of the Pro Tour Hall of Fame.
Yeah, many congratulations, Ben. And Ben will be with us to give us his insight into Team Limited over Friday and Saturday once we get to the World Magic Cup. Now, we have a new scoreboard to show you, because this is how the 16 measure up right now. This is where they are. Let's take a look. Ben Stark, he is 3-0. Reed Duke, he is 3-0. Then you get the 6 2-1s. Adel, Kibler, Wesco, Shanha, Froelich, and Sifka. Then we get on the right side 1 and 2, the 6 1 and 2s. Nakamura, Watanabe, Utter-Leighton, Martel, Shichan, and Ochoa. And the 2 players still looking for a win, that's Martin User, good heavens, and Dmitry Budakov, slightly less good heavens. Wow. So, we are now going into standard, and we have some pairings for you. We are going to see in the feature match tables Yuya Watanabe at 1 and 2 against Li Shichan. Again, Swiss pairings means we're going to play against the same record as each other. So that means we'll see players who've played against each other already in the course of the tournament. They don't just play everyone in a particular fashion.
Is that match going to be on video?
No, okay. that is just a feature match. We may see that on video at some stage.
I hope we see that on video.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, you have a little inside track on this, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I'm excited to see. I don't want to reveal anything just yet, but I would really like to see Li Shichan's deck on camera if possible.
Doing its thing.
Doing its thing. He believes he's got a little bit of a piece of tech for this tournament.
Tech, indeed. Okay, then at 2 and 1, we have Craig Wesco, your most recent Pro Tour champion, up against a man yet to have a Pro Tour top 8. Luis, in that interview, said, yep, once you get one, it gets easier, which must mean right now for Shahar Shenhar, it's harder.
Sure. Although he does have, it should be easier for him to get Pro Tour top 16s now, since he does have that.
Indeed. So he's at 2 and 1 against Craig Wesco. Then our text coverage will bring you Stanislav Sifka of the Czech Republic. He's the Czech who is holding his end up at the moment, 2 and 1, as opposed to Martin at 0-3. He's up against Eric Froelich, which I know Eric Froelich's your pick for this, isn't he?
He is. I mean, and again, someone who we've seen go. I've said it before. 26th, top 8, 10th in 3 Pro Tours this year.
Incredible. But where we are going to start is not with 3 and 0. We are going to start with a great match. 2 and 1. It's Willie Adel of Brazil up against Brian Kibler at 2 and 1. That is where we're going to start our standard coverage. So, enough. That closes out our discussion of the Hall of Fame. Once again, Louis Scott-Vargas, William Jensen, and Ben Stark. Congratulations to the 3 of them. 3 fantastic additions to our pinnacle organisation, it's fair to say, in the game. Just wonderful. Great to have them. So, time for standard, time for round 4. Let's get back to the action here at the World Championships 2013.